Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Armen Georgian in Paris. Hundreds of thousands of Afghans have been internally displaced, and up to 500,000 Afghans could flee across land borders by the end of the year. That's according to the UN's refugee agency. The European Union says it expects, quote, increased migratory pressure, unquote, because of instability under Taliban rule. That means my guest today has his work cut out. Fabrice Leggeri heads up Frontex, the EU's border and Coast Guard agency, and he joins me today from Warsaw in Poland. Thank you so much for being my guest, Mr. Leggeri. What are you doing to prepare for this likely new flow of Afghan migrants to Europe?
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. Well, in fact, we are preparing contingency plans with our EU member states because we know that there are already millions of Afghani citizens which emigrated many years ago to countries like Iran, Pakistan, or Turkey, just to give you some examples. And the situation is that now, because of the developing events in Kabul and in Afghanistan, it is impossible to return, let's say, irregular migrants, including economic migrants, to Afghanistan. So this could be an incentive for Afghani people living already abroad to try to move to the European Union. That's one point, and of course we will have to see what's happening actually in Afghanistan, and people, as the United Nations announced, might want to flee from Afghanistan because they are in need of international protection, especially women and girls, and probably some other people. So we are waiting some gradual increase of crossings of our external borders by...
I gather that you're testing new equipment near the Greek-Turkish land border and also on the island of Limnos. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about concrete preparations that you're making.
Well, we are testing aerostat, so kind of balloons that are close to the external border or to the maritime borders. But I have to say that these tests are not linked to the situation in Afghanistan. These were research and innovation project that had already been planned, and it's simply that for geographic reason, it was useful to test this close to a land border and close to the island. So it's just by chance that now we have the test at the Greek border to Turkey. But this shows that we also have a mandate as Frontex, European Border and Coast Guard Agency. We have the mandate to develop new technologies to test, and possibly to test in real conditions, meaning at real external borders.
Just to come back to the nature of this new Afghan migration that we're likely to see in the next few months, you were quoted in the French newspaper Le Parisien as saying, some of those who will be trying to reach Europe could pose a risk and could be used as tools by terrorist organizations. Why are you saying that when, I mean, you're not the EU's anti-terrorism coordinator, so what's your basis in facts and data that you have at your disposal for making that claim?
Well, as the agency in charge of, let's say our mandate is to support member states in border management, and part of the border management and part of Frontex mandate is also to contribute to prevention of terrorism at the external border. We work, of course, closely with national authorities of our member states. We work closely with Europol, and we have developed also common standards, risk indicators, for example. And what is for sure the situation that with people coming from somehow battlefield or areas of conflict, one has to quickly identify who is who. I also talked I had the possibility to talk to judicial authorities in some member states. You know that we also have the possibility in our mandate to collect personal data for the purpose of criminal investigations. I had also the opportunity to have discussions with authorities in charge of asylum. And one of their concern is that sometimes it's very difficult to identify who is the victim and who is the perpetrator when you have people coming back from.
But just to be clear, most of that work is going to be done in the EU member states, isn't it, when asylum claims are processed rather than by Frontex?
We have a strong operational footprint at the external borders. So we are deployed, for example, with the European Standing Corps. We have right now more than 2,000 staff, border guard and coast guard officers deployed at the external borders. So it's part of our mandate to contribute. But I'm saying we are contributing to the prevention of terrorism. It's not our core business, but we have to be ready and we have to be aware that border management is not limited, let's say, to migration management or crowd management. It's also related to security management at the external borders. And this is why I was saying that we have to be very cautious, and we can, in our mandate, debrief the person crossing illegally the borders, so to debrief, to identify their nationalities, to better understand in terms of risk analysis who they are, why they are coming to the European Union, and so on. So in that context, in the context of this kind of support, the debriefing, the fingerprinting, the registration, which is very important for both, let's say, to have a log in for the asylum authorities later on, but also to carry out the security checks in the Schengen information system, which is part of our mandate as well.
I need to ask you about the issue of migrant pushbacks, because, of course, this has been a controversy affecting Frontex for some time. The European Parliament carried out a 4-month fact-finding mission, and it concluded that Frontex found evidence in support of allegations of fundamental rights violations in EU member states with which it had a joint operation, but failed to address and follow up on those violations promptly. And in response to that European Parliament report, your spokesperson said, "We acknowledge the need to upgrade our reporting mechanism to make sure no possible violation of fundamental rights goes unreported." What's happened with that upgrade in monitoring and in reporting to make sure that you improve this kind of performance?
Well, first, you mentioned indeed an important recommendation that we have now already implemented, but I also would like to recall everybody that the main conclusion that came from this fact-finding mission of the European Parliament was that there is no evidence of Frontex violating fundamental rights. When it comes to the reporting system, we have improved the serious incident report mechanism. Now it has been simplified. I have adopted it in the form of our internal regulation in February 2021. It says category 1 of incident is the allegation or suspicion of violation of fundamental rights. And in this case, the report goes directly to the fundamental rights officer, which is an independent authority working within the agency, but is independent. Then I think the simplification of the categories make it easier for our staff and also for the members of the Standing Corps to identify these kind of questions. There are other situations which are not related to fundamental rights, but it's also improved for that purpose. And maybe importantly also, the whistleblowing mechanism that we have already.
You mentioned the fundamental rights officers. According to one of the authors of that European Parliament report I mentioned earlier, the fundamental rights officers that you have recruited are not all monitors in the strict sense that some of them are assistants and therefore cannot go to places and independently verify potential human rights violations. Is that true?
This is not exact and correct. I will explain. The fundamental rights officer is the head of a service, which is the Fundamental Rights Office, which employs and is now recruiting fundamental rights monitors. So the fundamental rights officer is, let's say, the authority which is independent and which leads and develops this pool of fundamental rights monitors. The fundamental rights monitors are now, well, we have half of them, 20 have already been recruited. We are in the process, I'm saying we because I made the resources available to the
only half, because you were supposed to have 40 by the end of last year, I think. That's a lot of delay.
It's a lot of delay because there was a complex legal framework to be put in place in 2020 to be adopted by the management board. And one of the questions that was a very difficult question to solve is to what extent can the fundamental rights officer be independent while the fundamental rights officer gets a budget delegation from the executive director, and the executive director, and this is in line with the financial regulations applying to any EU body, the executive director is accountable for the use of the budget. So we had to solve this issue. But coming back to the grading of the monitors.
Okay, sorry, we'll have to. I'm so sorry, Mr. Leggeri. We've run out of time. There's obviously a lot more we could talk about, but we'll have to leave it for this particular edition. Thank you so much for being my guest, Fabrice Leggeri, head of Frontex, the EU's border agency. That's all we have time for. Thank you for watching the interview.
We are journalists, and normally you have to listen to us, but you have things to tell us too. Maybe you've experienced a dramatic event, or you've got something important to say. You want to make a difference. That is why we created The Observers. Now, the first step is very easy. You get in touch with our team. Send us your images, tell us what you've seen. And then it's our job to get your voice out there, on our site, on social networks, on your mobiles and tablets, and on TV, of course. You can appear in our weekly show via webcam. Or perhaps we'll come see you in person, where you live, in your country, your town, and we'll work together on a report for our investigative show, The Observers Direct. So you get the idea. This show is your show, your way to get your voice out to the world.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.